I found it! I knew I would find it. I knew I didn't give up hope. I have faith and I found it. I am a mood reader and I am so over horror right now. I want to read some fun fantasy fiction. And not grimdark fantasy. I want something cozy and warm, but also very, very fantastical. Something that has a decent world, that is immersive, that you feel is tangible, that you can get lost in. But it's also a world populated by lovable and charming people. And I keep telling myself that the romantasy genre is what I'm looking for. That romantasy will give me the cozy warmth that I need right now, but will also have the fantasy elements that I love, the world building, the lore, the history. And of course, I tried A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it's dreadful, it's terrible, it is offensively awful. But I told myself, no, there must be something out there for me. And I found it. This is Faebound by el-arifi, and if, like me, you desperately want to enjoy romantasy fiction but it keeps letting you down, read this. There are no bad genres, and I don't think there are any genres that I don't personally enjoy. There is good art within every single genre of fiction. I used to think I didn't like crime fiction and thrillers until the right ones came along, and I was starting to think that I couldn't like romantasy until Faebound came along. So why is Faebound so great? Why should this be the pinnacle of the romantasy genre rather than that fucking ACOTAR shit? Let me explain. First of all, Faebound is queer. If you make things gay, everything is better. We know this to be true. Gay stuff is better. And Faebound is gay from page one, and it doesn't feel like it's pandering to queer audiences and patronizing us. It doesn't feel like queerbaiting. It is gay to its core, and I believe it. I feel the queerness, and I'm so happy about that. There are fantasy and romantasy books that you read where you feel like you're on a stage and everything around you is a cardboard cutout. The world is two-dimensional. If you poke at it, it'll fall over. It doesn't feel substantive. There's nothing to it. There is no texture. There is no history. There is no depth to the world and the characters, the history, the religion, the traditions, etc., etc. I like a fantasy book that has a bit of depth, that has been thought through. The geography and history of it is real. When I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I kept thinking to myself, no, this is a romance book that's been set in a vaguely fantasy-looking space, but is in fact just fantasizing about men being toxic to women. And where is the fantasy in that, by the way? That's just life. But Faebound, while it isn't as deep as something like Game of Thrones, is still a world that I can believe in. And I am so relieved about that. Wait, pause the video. If you're enjoying this and you want to see me make more videos like it, why not support me on Patreon at patreon.com/willowtalksbooks. If you love my videos, please consider supporting me. I give my patrons so many perks. They keep this channel going, and I could not survive without them. I am so grateful for every single one of my patrons, and I reward them as much as I possibly can. Patreon keeps me going. Thank you. Faebound tells the story of two elven sisters, Yiran and Lettel. Yiran's a little bit older than Lettel, and we begin with her story, but as the novel goes on, we flip back and forth between these two sisters once they face exile. See, this world was once populated by three races, each of these three races created by three different gods. Those races were initially the elves, the fae, and the humans. Now, as far as anyone is aware, only the elves remain, and there are stories, fairy tales, about what happened to the other two races. And now the elves are separated into, I think it's 4 factions, 4 clans, 4 groups, 4 cultures. And in the middle of all of their different homelands, there is a kind of endless battleground where they wage war against each other, because beneath that battleground are natural resources that will benefit everyone, and they have been fighting over these resources for centuries. It is an endless war. It is just what they do at this point. It's automatic, it is tradition, they don't know anything else but warring amongst each other. And when the novel begins, we are introduced to Yiran, who has just been promoted to, I don't know, colonel, captain, whatever military rank she's now in, it doesn't matter. She has a lover who is the princess of their clan, and in the book's opening chapters, Yiran makes a decision, a very bad military decision, based on a divination given to her by her sister. This decision, which goes against her orders, has dire consequences. And as a result, rather than being executed, she is cast out of their land. Her sister and another officer in the army who was close to Yiran both set out together to find her, to chase her down, to accompany her, to do something. And while Yiran is wandering through the wilderness, she finds an animal that she wants to hunt, kill, and eat. Now, these animals are often killed and their skin, which is magical, is used to create drums, and these drums are their weapons. When you hit the drum, it sends out some kind of magic that can kill the enemy. It's kind of cool, kind of weird. You don't ever really get a good idea of what it looks like in practice, but it's fun to consider. And she sees one of these beasts that are always used for their skins, and she's gonna hunt it and kill it. And when she does, a bunch of fae show up, whose entire civilization was thought gone. And they reveal to her that each of these beasts is in fact emotionally tethered, psychically tethered, to a fae, exactly like the demons in his Dark Materials. Every single one of these creatures that has been killed by an elf to create the skin of a drum or for their meat wasn't the only thing that was killed. When one of these beasts is killed, a fae dies too. Again, exactly like the demons in his Dark Materials. One cannot survive without the other. Yiran in this moment realizes how many she must have killed, how many her people have killed. They've been killing fae without ever knowing it. And the fae are trapped in a world that they cannot escape because of a curse. They live in this perfect little harmonious paradise, but it is still a kind of prison. Yiran and her sister are dragged to this place. She will face trial for the death of this beast and therefore the death of a fae, and it wasn't just a fae, it was someone very important, and we go from there. I won't tell you any more about the plot. Now, Faebound is a very good demonstration of the fact that a story can be greater than the sum of its parts, and also that not everything is mimicry, because even though I didn't like A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I will rant about that forever, you can see so many similarities in Faebound. The fact that our protagonist gets in trouble with an entirely different culture and race of people over hunting and killing something that wasn't just an animal after all, that is literally the inciting incident in both books. It's more or less identical, it's just more interesting in Faebound. The fact that they are tethered reminded me of his Dark Materials. There aren't really elements in this book that feel wholly original to it. So many things will remind you of so many other fantasy stories, but all of those things come together through el-Arifi's writing to create something that feels tangibly and wholly original. You believe this world, you believe the characters because of how she writes them, because she takes time to make these people three-dimensional, to make the world feel like a tangible place that exists that you could walk around and understand. You learn about the lore and the history, you learn about the culture, you learn about their food and their clothing and their weapons and their traditions and their systems of government. It's all there. It is not just the bones of a fantasy story in a fantasy world, but the meat and the muscles, the brain, the nervous system. It is a real, actual living place that you experience as you read it. I was so relieved to find that after being so shocked by the dreadful quality in A Court of Thorns and Roses, because it means that we can all have our cake and eat it. If you are let down by romantasy, you have a chance to enjoy it here in Faebound. And if you love romantasy, well, Faebound is the best that I've read. It's actually good. If you enjoy A Court of Thorns and Roses, you can read Faebound after and see what good writing actually looks like in a genre you already know that you enjoy. I am begging every single ACOTAR fan to read Faebound because it's similar but better, and you get to see what a good book looks like. Sorry, that is so patronizing. I'm like half sorry. And yes, there is spice. I was told this ahead of time, so I'm gonna tell you as well. In the final quarter of the book, it gets very, very heated, very spicy, very graphic, and it's good. Like, it's actually written well. And this is how I know how queer this book is to its core, is there are queer sex scenes and straight sex scenes. You know, make sure that everyone is satisfied. The queer sex scenes are hotter. I'm not just saying that as a queer person. They are written with a lot more passion, a lot more detail. I was very impressed. The straight sex scenes are good. You know, if you're straight, you'll be satisfied, but it just reminds you that as someone who has experienced both, queer sex is a lot more fun. Faebound is electric. It is such an exciting story. And I do need to emphasize that there really isn't much original in it, and it just doesn't matter because it's greater than the sum of its parts. It takes so much influence from so many different spaces and creates something that feels tangibly unique. El-Arifi has done what so many great authors do. Take their inspirations, take their influences, even lean into and pander to what's popular right now, what the audiences are craving for, what the publishing scene looks like, and still create something that is good, that is worthwhile art, that is queer as hell and worth experiencing. A book that has changed my mind on an entire genre that I couldn't help until this point to be so skeptical of. And after reading this, I've gone out and bought like 3 more romantasy books, now hoping that this is actually a genre that I can enjoy because faebound convinced me it's possible. That any genre can be made good by good writers. That's all it takes. And Sarah El-Arifi is a wonderful, wonderful writer. I'm so grateful for faebound. It has shown me what good romantasy looks like, and I beg every romantasy fan who hasn't read this book yet to check it out as soon as possible. It's gay as hell and genuinely good fantasy. I can't ask for more. Subscribe for books.